I am beyond grateful and completely in awe of what Jesus has done. He paid for it all. Salvation doesn't just mean be saved. It doesn't just mean that. It means be healed physically, mentally, emotionally. It means be delivered. And I realize that now I've been healed. Jesus paid for all of it. Hi, my name is Sharon, and I have been a Christian for many years, probably nearly 40 now. I have a past of quite a lot of abuse, particularly at my childhood was not pretty. So by the time I was in adulthood, I was quite broken. I was quite a broken person. I had lots of difficulties with negative thoughts and knowing who I was. I struggled with that for a lot of years. And when I became a Christian, I thought it was all going to go away, but it didn't immediately go away at all. I still had many struggles for a long time. And then probably around 20 years ago, I began to suffer a lot of pain and exhaustion in my body. And it would start in one area and it would be there for maybe a week and then disappear. Then I'd get it in another area for a few days, it would disappear. And this happened all around my body. And I went to doctor upon consultant who sent me for x-rays, blood tests, everything for many years to try and find out what was wrong. And meanwhile, my symptoms were getting worse and they were getting closer and closer together. I was working full-time and it became a real struggle. I was in pain all the time and exhausted all the time. And finally, about 9 years ago, I was sent to another consultant and I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And I was also diagnosed with chronic plantar fasciitis in my feet, both of my feet, because I had extreme pain standing on my feet. I could stand on my feet for sort of 10, 20 minutes, but after that it was really bad, burning pain. And it was just explained away to me that they don't really know what causes fibromyalgia, but they know it's linked to trauma. And as I said, I had probably my first 25 years of life were trauma. So they just explained it away as trauma, and they told me that it was lifelong and it was just going to get worse. And many people I know that have had it, that's been their experience, they've got worse. And it was true that was my experience. I gradually got worse until I didn't remember what it felt like to not be in so much pain. I woke up, I was in pain. I went to bed, I was in pain, exhausted all the time. I reached a point where I had to change my work to part-time because I couldn't cope with full-time. And even then, I would finish work, I would go home, and I would lie on the sofa in a lot of pain. I was put on a whole load of painkillers, including an opioid patch that I wore 24 hours a day. I had morphine liquid that I was drinking. I had gabapentin, tramadol, everything, you name it. It was just living on painkillers to try and get through the day. And my life was just destroyed. I got to a point where I didn't recognize myself. And obviously my husband carried the same sentence because we used to be very active. We used to do a lot of exercise, a lot of walking, and we couldn't do any of it. I was literally going to work, coming home, laying on the sofa in pain, and every night, it got to the stage where every night, between 6 and 7, I was going to bed, because by then I was exhausted and I just didn't know what to do with myself with the pain. And I cried for probably a whole year of just crying. I didn't recognize myself. It was just like extreme grief of this person that I had lost. And then after a couple of years, the doctors then added ME stroke chronic fatigue syndrome to my list of what was wrong with me. That led to, we literally had to move house because I struggled to get up and down the stairs, so we had to move somewhere that was flat, and I gave up work completely. So our lives were, well, we weren't living, we were just existing. My husband became my full-time carer, and he was registered with the GP and my local council as my registered carer. I literally couldn't do anything. He washed my hair for me, he helped me wash, he helped me do everything. He did all the cooking. I can't even describe, it was horrendous. And then alongside this, I still had, these arrows in my mind of I wasn't good enough and things were my fault and I was never going to get better. All these kind of negative arrows. And then last year I came across, whilst looking on YouTube, I came across the demon slayers. So that's, Daniel Adams and Isaiah and Mike and, all the demon slayers. And I began to listen to their teaching and my eyes began to be opened, and they were talking about Christians carrying demons, which I had never been taught at all that a Christian could carry a demon, and I had no indication that I was carrying demons, because, as I say, my condition was explained away by the doctors as being caused by my trauma. That was their explanation, and I was also diagnosed with complex PTSD, and obviously their explanation for that was also my trauma. But they began to paint a different picture for me, and then I read a book by one of the demon slayers, and it had lots of prayers in there of curse breaking, renunciations, and talked about how we agree with things, and when we agree with these diagnoses and all these negative thoughts, that we're actually on the side of the enemy, and we're actually not on God's side, because I know that the Bible says I've been healed, and sickness is not my portion. But every time I agreed with my diagnosis and would say to someone, I have fibromyalgia, I have plantar fasciitis, I began to realize that in doing that, I was enforcing what was wrong with me. I was agreeing with it, enforcing it. And I literally came to a place where I just repented. I was crying. I repented of all of it. And this real realization of what I had done, that I had been on the enemy's side. I repented. I went through many prayers of renunciation, renounced it all. And I went through renunciations of the abuse I'd been through. Even though it wasn't my fault, it was still sin done to me. So I renounced all of that, a whole load of generational curse breaking. After that, for the next couple of weeks, I noticed a change in my pain levels. Just that renunciation and coming out of agreement with my diagnosis and all the pain was having an impact. I was taking less painkillers, and I could feel a shift, but obviously it was still very much there, but there was a definite shift. And then one day at home, one of the demon slayers was doing deliverance online, and they began to call out things, and they got to trauma, and I started to manifest at home, which was a horrendous shock. It was my first indication that what I was suffering from may actually be spiritual and not physical, like the doctors had told me. So I quickly searched where I could get deliverance, and I found out that Daniel Adams was coming to Epsom literally 2 weeks later. So I went to Epsom, and I was prayed for by a couple of people, and I went through a lot of deliverance. And they literally called out all of this trauma and fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, my feet. They literally called it all out. And as they were calling it out, I was manifesting and coughing this stuff up. It went on for quite a while. But I got off that floor and I stood up. And even as I stood up, the pain was gone. And I had not remembered what it felt like to not be in pain for 9 years. I could not remember what it felt like to not feel pain in my body. So to stand up and have no pain in my body, I can't even describe how I felt. So in awe of God, so grateful to the ministry and that the Lord had showed me this way, and made me realize that it was just all lies. It was all lies that I had agreed with. And I stood and I looked at everybody else around me were having deliverance, and my heart just broke for them. It just broke, because many years before that, God had actually called me and he had spoken Luke over me, saying that I had been anointed to preach the good news and to set the captives free and to open blind eyes. And I'd had that preached over me several years before, and I had been involved in women's ministry where I had come alongside a lot of broken women, but this deliverance, this piece of the puzzle was missing. It was missing, and I never understood why. I never understood why we weren't seeing the miracles that Acts tell us about. But I stood there at Epsom during this Daniel Adams conference, and I stood in the book of Acts. All around me was people being delivered, being set free and being healed. And my heart broke and tears came down my face, and I just knew this was it. This is what God had called me to do, and this is what I was going to do. And I was pretty angry at Satan, and it was like, I'm going to give you a migraine every day of your life because you tried to destroy me. And I went home, I signed up to TSNL, me and my husband, and we did the certified training. We became certified, and now we are carrying out what I said, trying to give Satan a migraine every day of his life by coming alongside people that were broken and hurting like me and seeing them set free. And that's the other thing. I jumped up and all my pain had gone and the exhaustion had gone, but also the thoughts. You know, I said I had all these negative thoughts all the time. They disappeared as well, and they've never returned. And it's now been maybe 7-8 months, and those thoughts have not returned. My pain has not returned. My exhaustion has not returned. And I have my life back, all because of Jesus Christ and this amazing ministry. And I am beyond grateful, and completely in awe of what Jesus has done. He did pay for it all on the cross. He paid for it all. Salvation is from sozo, and it doesn't just mean be saved. It doesn't just mean that. It means be healed physically, mentally, emotionally. It means be delivered. And I realize that now. You know, Jesus paid for all of it, that we're supposed to be whole, completely whole. And through this ministry, he has shown me that. And I finally, after many, many years, I finally feel that wholeness in me, that I'm whole and I'm what God created me to be. And yeah, from here on in, it's whatever he wants me to do. I'm spending my days sharing my testimony, sharing my story, to say there is hope, there's always hope, and don't listen to the lies of the enemy. The enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy. But Jesus came, and he came to bring us life, and life more abundantly. And I can honestly say, in the last 8 or 9 months, that is what he's brought. That is what he's brought. And I now would not change my life for all the tea in China. All the money in the world, I would not change my life.